The cold on planet Arcturus 7 was the kind that killed without warning. It crept into machines and froze their parts solid. It turned fuel into useless ice. It made the air itself feel like tiny knives cutting into any exposed skin. Daniel Harper had lived on this frozen world for 4 years now, and he still felt a chill run down his spine every time he looked at the temperature readings on his console. Minus 140 degrees, and that was on a good day. Daniel was a big man with rough hands and a face weathered by years of hard work. He had come to this distant mining colony when he was 32 years old, looking for a way to make enough money to give his family back on Earth a better life. Now he was 36, and he had become the foreman of Mining Station Sigma-12, the largest human outpost on this frozen rock at the edge of known space. The station was home to 63 workers, men and women who drilled into the ice and rock to pull out precious minerals that powered the engines of starships across the galaxy. They worked 12-hour shifts in conditions that would make most people quit on the first day. But they stayed because the pay was good, and because Daniel Harper treated them like family. On this particular evening, Daniel sat in his small office reviewing the day's production reports. The numbers looked good. They had exceeded their quota for the third month in a row, which meant bonuses for everyone. He allowed himself a small smile as he thought about what his wife Maria would say when she saw the extra credits in their account. Maybe they could finally afford to move to a better neighborhood back in Chicago. Maybe his daughter Sophie could go to that fancy school she had been dreaming about. A knock on his door interrupted his thoughts. "Come in," Daniel called out. The door slid open and his assistant supervisor walked in. Her name was Rachel, a small woman with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense attitude. She had been on Arcturus 7 almost as long as Daniel, and he trusted her judgment completely. "We have a problem," Rachel said without any greeting. Her face was pale, and there was something in her eyes that Daniel had never seen before. It looked like fear. Daniel sat up. "What kind of problem?" "The perimeter sensors picked up something about 20 minutes ago. 4 large heat signatures approaching from the northern ice fields." Rachel paused and took a breath. "They are not human, Daniel, and they are not any species in our database." Daniel stood up and walked to the window of his office. Outside, the endless white expanse of the frozen plain stretched toward the horizon. The twin moons of Arcturus 7 hung low in the sky, casting a pale blue light over everything. He could see nothing moving out there, but he knew that in this kind of cold, you often could not see death coming until it was too late. "Show me the sensor data," he said. Rachel handed him a tablet. The screen showed 4 red dots moving slowly but steadily toward the station. The heat signatures were massive, much larger than any human or known alien species. Whatever these things were, they were big, really big. "Have you tried to make contact?" Daniel asked. No response to any standard communication frequencies. "But Daniel, there is something else." Rachel touched the screen and brought up a visual feed from one of the external cameras. "We managed to get an image about 10 minutes ago, before the snow got too heavy." Daniel looked at the image and felt his heart stop. The creatures in the picture had long necks and powerful bodies covered in scales. They had 4 legs and great wings folded against their sides. Their heads were crowned with horns that seemed to glow faintly in the dim light. They looked like something out of the old Earth legends that Daniel's grandmother used to tell him when he was a child. They looked like dragons. "That is not possible," Daniel whispered. "The Draconians," Rachel said quietly. "I did some research. There are old reports, very old, from the early days of human space exploration. Some pilots claim to have seen creatures like this near the Ember Nebula, thousands of light years from here. But no one ever made official contact. Most people thought they were just stories." Daniel stared at the image. The largest of the 4 creatures was a deep blue color, almost purple in places. It was supporting another dragon, this one silver-white, that appeared to be injured. Behind them came two smaller dragons, their movements hesitant and uncertain. Young ones, Daniel realized. Children. They are coming straight toward us, Rachel said. They will reach the outer perimeter in about 15 minutes. What do you want to do? Daniel thought about protocol. He thought about the rules that governed contact with unknown alien species. He thought about the safety of his crew and the station. All of these things told him he should lock down the facility and wait for the creatures to pass by. But then he looked at the image again. He saw the way the blue dragon was struggling to support its injured companion. He saw the way the two young ones huddled close together against the brutal cold. He saw a family in trouble, and something deep inside him made a decision before his brain could catch up. "Open the main cargo bay," Daniel said. Rachel's eyes went wide. "Daniel, you cannot be serious. We do not know anything about these creatures. They could be dangerous." "They could be," Daniel agreed. "But look at them, Rachel. That female is hurt badly. Those young ones are freezing. They are not coming here to attack us. They are coming here because they have nowhere else to go." "And if you are wrong?" Daniel met her eyes. "Then I will take full responsibility. But I am not going to let a family die outside my door when I have the power to help them." Rachel stared at him for a long moment. Then she nodded slowly. "I hope you know what you are doing." "So do I," Daniel said quietly. "So do I." The cargo bay was the largest enclosed space in the station. It was normally used to store mining equipment and supplies, but Daniel had ordered everything moved to the sides to create an open area in the center. He had the heating systems turned up as high as they could go, making the bay warm enough for humans to work in without protective suits. 30 of his crew members had gathered to watch, their faces showing a mixture of fear and curiosity. Daniel had told them what was coming, and to their credit, none of them had refused to be present. These were tough people who had chosen to work on one of the most hostile planets in the galaxy. They did not scare easily. Daniel stood at the front of the group, watching the massive cargo doors. Outside, he could hear the wind howling as the temperature dropped even further. A major storm was coming, the kind that could last for days or even weeks. If those creatures had not found shelter, they would not survive the night. The external sensors beeped. The 4 heat signatures had reached the outer perimeter. "Open the doors," Daniel ordered. The great metal doors groaned as they slid apart, revealing the frozen wasteland beyond. A blast of cold air rushed into the bay, making everyone shiver despite the heating systems. And then, through the swirling snow, the dragons appeared. They were even more magnificent up close than Daniel had imagined. The blue dragon was enormous, at least 40 feet from nose to tail, with scales that shimmered with an inner light. His eyes were golden and ancient, holding a wisdom that seemed to stretch back through countless ages. He moved with a grace that seemed impossible for a creature of his size, supporting the injured silver female with obvious care. The female was smaller, perhaps 30 feet long, but no less beautiful. Her scales were the color of moonlight, pale and delicate. One of her wings hung at a strange angle, clearly broken, and there were dark stains on her side where blood had frozen against her scales. She was barely conscious, her breathing shallow and labored. Behind them came the 2 young dragons. They were about 15 feet long each, still growing into their adult forms. One had scales of deep green, the other a warm amber color. They pressed close to their parents, their eyes wide with fear and cold and exhaustion. The blue dragon stopped at the threshold of the cargo bay, his golden eyes scanning the assembled humans. Daniel could feel the intelligence in that gaze, the calculation and assessment. This creature was deciding whether they could be trusted. Daniel stepped forward, separating himself from the group. He held his hands out to his sides, showing that he carried no weapons. "My name is Daniel Harper," he said, speaking slowly and clearly. "I am the leader of this station. You are welcome here. Please come inside. We will help you." The blue dragon studied him for a long moment. Then, to Daniel's surprise, the great creature lowered his head in a gesture that looked almost like a bow. "You show great courage, Daniel Harper," the dragon said. His voice was deep and resonant like distant thunder rolling across mountains. "Or great foolishness, I am not certain which." "Maybe a little of both," Daniel admitted. "But your family needs help and I can provide it. That seems more important than fear right now." The dragon's golden eyes flickered with something that might have been respect. "I am called, my mate is, our children are, and we are of the draconians of the Ember Reaches, and we are in your debt." "We can talk about debts later," Daniel said. "Right now, let us get your family inside where it is warm." Guided his family into the cargo bay. The doors closed behind them, shutting out the killing cold. The young dragons immediately moved closer to the heating vents, their scales seeming to drink in the warmth. Collapsed onto the floor, her injured wing spreading out at an unnatural angle, stood over her protectively, his eyes never leaving the watching humans. Daniel turned to his crew. "Someone get Doctor down here right now, and I need blankets as many as we have, portable heaters too. Move." The crew scattered to follow his orders. Rachel approached Daniel with a questioning look. "Are you sure about this?" she asked quietly. "No," Daniel admitted. "But look at them, Rachel. They are scared and hurt and exhausted. Whatever they are, wherever they came from, they are a family who needs help. I could not live with myself if I turned them away." Rachel nodded slowly. "You are a good man, Daniel Harper, probably too good for your own good." "My wife says the same thing." Doctor arrived 10 minutes later, carrying a medical bag and wearing an expression of barely controlled panic. He was a small man with thinning hair and nervous hands, but he was also the best doctor Daniel had ever worked with. If anyone could help the injured dragon, it was him. "This is impossible," said as he approached. "I am a human doctor. I have no idea how dragon biology works. I could kill her by accident." "Then do not kill her by accident," Daniel said simply. Shot him a look that was somewhere between annoyance and terror. But then he took a deep breath, squared his shoulders, and knelt down beside the injured dragon. "I am going to examine your wounds," he said too, his voice gentle despite his fear. "I will try not to hurt you, but I need you to stay still. Can you do that?" His eyes opened, and Daniel was struck by how beautiful they were. They were the color of liquid silver, deep and luminous. She looked at the small human doctor with an expression that held both pain and gratitude. "I will try," she said. Her voice was softer than her mate's, like bells chiming in a distant wind. "Thank you for your kindness, healer." Began his examination, his hands surprisingly steady as he probed the dragon's wounds. Watched every movement with intense focus, but he did not interfere. Daniel noticed that the crew members who had returned with blankets and heaters were keeping their distance, still unsure of the massive creatures in their cargo bay. "The wing is broken in 2 places," announced after several minutes. "The good news is that the breaks are clean. If I can set the bones properly, they should heal. The bad news is that she has lost a lot of blood, and I have no idea how to replace it." "Our kind heal quickly," said. "If the bones are set and she can rest in warmth, we'll recover. The blood will replenish itself." Nodded and got to work. Daniel watched as the doctor carefully manipulated the broken wing, setting the bones back into their proper positions. Hissed in pain but did not move, her silver eyes fixed on her mate for strength. When it was done, bound the wing with strips of thermal bandages, creating a makeshift splint that would hold the bones in place. "That is the best I can do," said, stepping back. "She needs to rest and stay warm. No movement for at least a few days if possible." "Thank you," healer said. "Your skill honors your profession." Blinked in surprise at the formal words. Thank you. I have never treated a dragon before, or met one for that matter. This has been quite an evening." Despite the tension in the room, Daniel felt himself smile. always did have a talent for understatement. The two young dragons and had been watching the proceedings with wide eyes. Now that their mother was being cared for, they seemed to relax slightly. The green one was looking around the cargo bay with obvious curiosity. The amber one had her eyes fixed on Daniel with an intensity that made him slightly uncomfortable. "You are the leader here," said. Her voice was lighter than her parents', not yet fully developed. "Why did you help us? You did not have to." Daniel considered the question. It was a good one, and he wanted to give an honest answer. "Because it was the right thing to do," he said finally. "Where I come from, we have a saying. You judge a person not by how they treat their friends, but by how they treat strangers who need help. I saw your family out there in the cold, hurt and scared. I had the ability to help, so I helped." Tilted her head, a gesture that reminded Daniel oddly of his daughter Sophie when she was thinking hard about something. "Among our kind, such actions would create a debt of honor. You would be owed repayment." "I do not want repayment," Daniel said. "I just want to know that you and your family are safe and healthy." "That is very strange," said. "I have been told that before," Daniel admitted. Approached Daniel, his massive form casting a shadow over the human Foreman. Up close, Daniel could see the fine details of the dragon's scales, the way they overlapped perfectly like the finest armor. He could smell something too, a scent like wood smoke and cinnamon, warm and somehow comforting. "We have traveled far," said. "We were on our way to a gathering of our kind, a meeting that happens only once every 100 years. But we were attacked by raiders, pirates who hunt our people for our scales and blood. They believe that consuming parts of our bodies grants them power." Daniel felt a surge of anger at this. The idea of hunting intelligent beings for body parts was disgusting beyond words. "The Crimson Syndicate," he said. "It was not a question." Nodded. "You know of them. They operate in this sector sometimes. We have had run-ins with them before. They are monsters." "On this we agree." His golden eyes darkened with old pain. "They attacked our flight group without warning. Most of us escaped but was wounded before we could get away. We fled into the storm, hoping the weather would hide us. When our strength gave out, we saw your station's lights and knew it was our only hope." "How long can you stay?" Daniel asked. "We should leave as soon as the storm passes and can fly. We have already imposed upon your hospitality too much." "With respect," Daniel said, "that is stupid." Blinked, clearly surprised by the blunt response. "Excuse me. Your mate is badly injured. Your children are exhausted. And there is a good chance those pirates are still out there looking for you. You should stay here until is fully healed, not just well enough to limp along." "We cannot ask that of you. Your people did not sign up to harbor refugees." "My people did not sign up to let a family die either." Daniel turned to face the crew members who were still present. "Anyone here have a problem with our guests staying for a while?" There was a moment of silence. Then a grizzled miner named Frank Collins stepped forward. He was one of the oldest workers on the station, a veteran of dozens of mining operations across the galaxy. "I have seen a lot of strange things in my life," Frank said, "but I have never seen anything like you four. Frankly, you scare the hell out of me." He paused, and a slow smile spread across his weathered face. "But my grandmother always said that being scared was no excuse for being rude. You are welcome here for as long as you need." Other crew members murmured their agreement. Some still looked nervous, but no one objected. Daniel felt a warm pride in his chest. He had always known he worked with good people. Looked around at the assembled humans, his expression unreadable. Then he lowered his great head once more in that gesture of respect. "Your kindness humbles me, Daniel Harper. Your people humbles me. We will remember this always." "Just rest," Daniel said. "Get your family healthy. We can figure out the rest later." Over the next several days, mining station Sigma-12 settled into a new kind of normal. The storm raged outside, making any thought of the dragons leaving impossible. but inside the station, an unlikely community was forming. The cargo bay had been transformed into living quarters for the dragon family. Portable heaters created a warm zone where could rest comfortably. Blankets and padding had been arranged to make beds for each of the dragons. The station's cook, a cheerful woman named Martinez, had worked with to figure out what the dragons could eat. It turned out that they could safely consume certain mineral compounds that the station had in abundance, which prepared into something resembling meals. "It is not fancy," admitted as she served a tray of crystallized iron and copper compounds, "but it should give you some energy." Smiled, an expression that somehow translated perfectly despite her inhuman face. "It is delicious, Martinez. You have a gift." Blushed with pleasure and hurried off to prepare more. The young dragons had lost their fear of the humans and now spent their time exploring the station with boundless curiosity, had become fascinated with the mining equipment and spent hours watching the crews work on maintenance. He asked endless questions about how the drills worked, what the minerals were used for, and why the humans had come to such a cold and hostile planet. A young engineer named Peter had taken the green dragon under his wing, so to speak. Peter was in his mid-20s, fresh out of technical school, and possessed of an enthusiasm that matched his own. "See, the drill uses sonic vibrations to break apart the rock," Peter explained, pointing to a massive machine that stood in one corner of the maintenance bay. "That way we do not have to use explosives, which would be dangerous in these temperatures." "Fascinating," said, his eyes wide. "Your people have developed impressive technology. I had not realized humans were so clever." Peter laughed. "That sounds almost like an insult." "I apologize. I did not mean it that way. It is just that my father has always said that younger species tend to be, less advanced." "Well, you can tell your father that we may be young, but we are scrappy." Peter grinned. "Give us another 1,000 years and we will probably catch up with you." Made a sound that might have been a laugh. "I think I would like to see that." Meanwhile, had attached herself to Daniel Harper. She followed him on his rounds, watched him resolve disputes between crew members, and listened as he made decisions about the day-to-day operations of the station. At first, Daniel found her attention unnerving, but over time, he came to enjoy her company. She was intelligent and thoughtful, asking questions that showed a genuine interest in understanding how humans worked. "You care very much about these people," observed one evening as Daniel finished reviewing production reports. "You know all of their names, their families, their problems. Why?" Daniel leaned back in his chair. "Because a leader is responsible for the people under their care. I cannot just be a boss who gives orders. I have to know who these people are, what they need, what worries them. That is how you build trust." "My father says something similar. He says that a leader must be a servant first." "Your father sounds like a wise dragon." Scales rippled with colors that Daniel had learned indicated pleasure. "He is, but he can also be very stubborn. He has trouble accepting help from others, even when he needs it." "I noticed that," Daniel admitted. "The first thing he said when I offered to let you stay was that you could not impose on our hospitality." It is a matter of pride for him. Among our kind, accepting help without offering something in return is considered shameful. He struggles with the debt he feels he owes you." Daniel sighed. "I have tried to explain that no debt is necessary. You needed help. We helped. That is all." "It is not all," said quietly. "Not to us. You saved my mother's life, Daniel Harper. You gave us shelter when we had nowhere else to go. Among the Draconians, such actions create bonds that last for generations." Before Daniel could respond, an alarm began to blare throughout the station. Red lights flashed in the corridors, and Daniel was on his feet instantly. "What is it?" asked, her voice tight with sudden fear. Daniel was already running toward the command center. "Stay here," he called over his shoulder. "Stay with your family." The command center was a hub of controlled chaos when Daniel arrived. Crew members were at their stations, monitoring screens and shouting information to each other. Rachel was at the main console, her face grim. "What have we got?" Daniel demanded. "Ships," Rachel said. "3 of them just dropped out of faster than light about 50 kilometers from our position. They are running without identification beacons, but their energy signatures match known Crimson Syndicate vessels." Daniel felt ice form in his stomach that had nothing to do with the temperature outside. They followed them. "It looks that way. They are not approaching directly, probably trying to figure out if this is a civilian installation or if we have any defenses." "Do we have any defenses?" Rachel gave him a look. "This is a mining station, Daniel. We have one security shuttle with light weapons designed for scaring off claim jumpers. Against 3 pirate ships, we would last about 5 minutes." Daniel thought fast. The station had 63 workers plus the 4 dragons. If the syndicate attacked, there was no way they could fight them off. Running was not an option either, not in this storm, not with still injured. "Can we contact anyone? Earth Command, the Colonial Authority, anyone?" "The storm is disrupting long-range communications. We can barely pick up the pirate ships on sensors. Getting a message out would be impossible." Daniel closed his eyes for a moment, thinking. Then he made a decision. "Wake everyone up. Get all non-essential personnel to the deep shelters. I want the security team armed and ready to defend the main entrance." He paused. "And bring to me." 5 minutes later, the great blue dragon stood in the command center, his massive form barely fitting in the cramped space. His golden eyes were hard as he looked at the sensor readouts showing the 3 pirate ships. "They have found us," said. It was not a question. "It looks that way. We are trying to figure out our options." Was quiet for a moment. Then he turned to Daniel with an expression of resolve. "There is only one option. My family and I will surrender to them. If they have what they want, they will leave your station alone." "No," Daniel said immediately. "It is the only logical choice. Your people have no way to defend against an attack. If we surrender, the pirates will take us and go. Your station and your crew will be safe." "I said no." Daniel's voice was firm. "I did not offer you shelter just to hand you over to murderers at the first sign of trouble. There has to be another way." "There is no other way. I will not let innocent humans die because of us. And I will not let innocent dragons die because I was too much of a coward to stand up for what is right." Daniel met the dragon's ancient eyes without flinching. "We are in this together, all of us. So we fight together or we find a solution together. But no one is surrendering to anyone." The dragon stared at him for a long moment. Daniel could not read the expression on that inhuman face, but he thought he saw something like wonder in those golden eyes. "You are an extraordinary human," Daniel Harper said finally. "Very well. We will find another way together." Rachel cleared her throat. "I might have an idea." Both Daniel and turned to look at her. "The storm," Rachel said. "It is disrupting our communications, but it is also disrupting theirs. They cannot get a clear picture of what is inside the station. All they know is that there are heat signatures here, and one of them is probably draconian." "Go on," Daniel said. "What if we make them think there is more here than just one injured dragon and a mining crew? What if we make them think this is some kind of military installation, or that we have allies they were not expecting?" His eyes narrowed thoughtfully. "A deception. Make them believe the cost of attacking would be too high." "Exactly. The Syndicate are pirates, not soldiers. They attack targets of opportunity. If they think the opportunity is too risky, they will back off and look for easier prey." Daniel considered the plan. It was risky. If the pirates saw through the deception, they would attack anyway and they would be angry. But it was better than no plan at all. "What do you have in mind?" he asked. Rachel smiled grimly. "I have a few ideas." Over the next 2 hours, the crew of mining station Sigma-12 worked frantically to create the illusion of a much more formidable installation. They modified the sensor profile of their security shuttle to make it appear like a military patrol craft. They sent out fake communication signals designed to look like encrypted military traffic. They even managed to boost their external heating systems in a pattern that mimicked the energy signature of defensive weapon arrays. Meanwhile, and his family prepared for the worst. Despite her injuries, insisted on being moved to a position where she could help defend the station if necessary, and stood with their parents, their young faces set with determination. They were scared, Daniel could see that, but they were not going to run. "Whatever happens," said to Daniel as they waited for the pirates to make their move, "I want you to know that I am grateful for everything." "Save the gratitude for after we survive this," Daniel said. "My father says that gratitude should be expressed when it is felt, not when it is convenient. So I am expressing it now." Despite everything, Daniel smiled. "You know, you remind me of my daughter." Scales rippled with surprise. "You have a child." "Sophie, she is 12 years old. Smart as a whip and stubborn as a mule. She would like you, I think." "I would like to meet her someday." "Survive this, and maybe you will." The sensors beeped. The pirate ships were moving. "Here they come," Rachel announced. "All 3 ships approaching from the north. They will be in visual range in about 10 minutes. Daniel took a deep breath. This was it. Either their deception would work or they would have to find another way. "Send the prepared message," he ordered. Rachel pressed a button, and a pre-recorded transmission went out on all frequencies. The message was simple. "This is mining station Sigma-12, operating under the protection of the Earth Colonial Defense Force. Any hostile approach will be met with appropriate response. Be warned that additional military assets are on standby." It was a complete bluff, of course. There were no military assets anywhere near this system, but the pirates did not know that. Long minutes passed. The pirate ships continued their approach, but they slowed significantly. On the command center's display, Daniel could see them maneuvering into a defensive formation, clearly reassessing the situation. Then the communications console crackled to life. "Mining Station Sigma-12, this is Captain Vane of the independent vessel Crimson Star." The voice was smooth and cultured, with an undertone of cold cruelty. "We have reason to believe you are harboring fugitives from justice. Surrender them to us and we will be on our way. Resist, and we will be forced to take action." Daniel looked at. The dragon nodded slowly. Daniel pressed the transmission button. "Captain Vane, this is Foreman Daniel Harper. I do not know what fugitives you are talking about. This is a licensed mining operation under the protection of Earth Colonial Defense Force. Any hostile action against us would be considered an act of war." There was a pause. Then Vane laughed, but there was uncertainty in it. "An impressive bluff, Foreman, but we both know there are no military forces in this sector. Our sensors would have detected them." "Your sensors are being disrupted by the storm, Captain, same as ours. You have no idea what is waiting for you out here. Are you willing to bet your ships and your crew on a guess?" Another pause, longer this time. Daniel could imagine the pirate captain consulting with his crew, weighing the risks and rewards. The silence stretched on for what felt like hours. Finally, Vane's voice came back. "You have won this round, Foreman, but know this, we will not forget, and we will be back." The 3 pirate ships turned away from the station and began accelerating toward open space. Within minutes, they had jumped to faster-than-light speeds and disappeared from sensors entirely. Daniel let out a breath he had not realized he was holding. Around him, the command center erupted in cheers. Crew members hugged each other and slapped backs. Rachel actually laughed, a sound of pure relief. Approached Daniel, his golden eyes warm with emotion. "You did it," the dragon said. "You saved us again." "We did it," Daniel corrected. Your family, my crew, all of us together. Nevertheless, we are in your debt more deeply than ever. I do not know how we can ever repay you." Daniel thought about it for a moment. Then an idea came to him. "Actually," he said, "there might be something you can do." 3 days later, the storm finally began to clear. The temperature rose to merely freezing, and the skies opened up to reveal the brilliant stars of the outer reaches. Swing had healed enough for her to move carefully, though long flights were still impossible. But the immediate danger had passed, and it was time to think about the future. Daniel gathered the entire crew in the main hall, and his family were there as well, the dragons taking up most of one side of the room. The atmosphere was one of cautious hope. "Over the past week," Daniel began, "something remarkable has happened. We took in a family of strangers, beings we had never encountered before, because they needed help. And in return, we received something far more valuable than anything we could have asked for." He looked at, "Tell them what you told me." The great blue dragon stepped forward. "My people have avoided contact with younger species for. We thought ourselves above such interactions, too ancient and wise to bother with those who had not yet proven themselves. But what has happened here has shown me how wrong we were." He paused, his golden eyes moving over the assembled humans. "You showed us kindness without expectation of reward. You risked your lives to protect us, strangers who had no claim on your loyalty. You treated us not as threats or curiosities, but as a family in need. This is a quality that my people have lost over the long ages. It is a quality we need to remember." Spoke next, her voice still weak but growing stronger. "I have spent time with your healer. His knowledge is different from ours, but no less valuable. He saved my life with techniques that my own healers do not possess. This tells me that humans have much to teach us if we are willing to learn." Stepped forward eagerly. "And Peter showed me your mining technology. It is incredible. You have found ways to extract resources that we would never have considered. If we shared knowledge with each other, both our peoples could benefit enormously." Finally spoke. She looked directly at Daniel as she did. "Daniel Harper taught me what it means to be a leader. He showed me that true strength is not about power or dominance, but about caring for others and standing up for what is right, even when it is difficult. These are lessons I will carry with me for the rest of my very long life." Daniel felt his throat tighten. He had not expected such words. Continued. "When we reach the gathering of our kind, I will speak of what has happened here. I will tell them of the humans of Mining Station Sigma 12, who offered shelter to strangers and stood against pirates to protect those who had no claim on their protection. I will propose that the draconians of the Ember Reaches begin formal relations with humanity." Murmurs of amazement rippled through the assembled crew. First contact with an ancient, advanced alien species, forged not through diplomacy or negotiation, but through simple acts of kindness. "There is more," said. He reached up with one clawed hand and carefully removed a single scale from beneath his jaw. It glowed with an inner light, pulsing slowly like a heartbeat. He held it out to Daniel. "This is a heart scale," explained. "It is connected to my life force. As long as I live, it will glow, and anyone who holds it may call upon me once for any aid within my power to grant. I give it to you freely, Daniel Harper, in recognition of the kindness you have shown to my family." Daniel took the scale carefully. It was warm to the touch and surprisingly light. "I do not need a reward," Daniel said. "This is not a reward. It is a symbol of friendship. Among my kind, such gifts are only given to those we consider true allies. You have earned it, Daniel Harper. Do not insult me by refusing." Daniel could not help but smile. "Well, when you put it that way." The gathering broke up with a sense of new possibilities in the air. Over the next few days, preparations were made for the dragons to continue their journey. But it was clear that this was not an ending. It was a beginning. On the morning of their departure, the whole station turned out to say goodbye. Crew members who had initially been terrified of the dragons now embraced them like old friends. Peter and exchanged contact information, promising to stay in touch once communication networks were established. Gave a full medical report, which she accepted with gracious thanks. Found Daniel standing a little apart from the others, watching the preparations. "I meant what I said," she told him. "I will carry your lessons with me always." "And I will tell my daughter about you," Daniel replied. "When I get home, when this tour is over, I will tell Sophie about the brave young dragon who taught me that friendship can cross any divide." Scales rippled with emotion. "I hope we meet again, Daniel Harper." "I hope so too." She reached out with one clawed hand and gently touched his chest, right over his heart. "You have a good heart, the best I have ever known." Then she turned and joined her family as they moved toward the open cargo bay doors. The sky outside was clear for the first time in weeks, the twin suns casting golden light across the ice fields. Turned back one last time. "Remember, Daniel Harper, you have a friend among the stars. Should you ever need us, you need only call." And then, with a rush of wind and a flash of scales in the sunlight, the four dragons took to the sky. They circled once over the station, their calls echoing across the frozen plains like songs of gratitude. Then they turned toward the distant horizon and flew until they were nothing but specks against the infinite blue. Daniel watched until he could not see them anymore. Then he took a deep breath and turned back to his station. There was work to do. There was always work to do. But somehow, it did not seem quite so lonely anymore. 6 months later, Daniel Harper received a communication from Earth. His daughter Sophie had been accepted into the most prestigious engineering academy on the planet, a school that had rejected her application twice before. The acceptance letter mentioned a substantial scholarship from an anonymous benefactor. The benefactor was an organization called the Friends of the Flame. Its symbol was a dragon in flight. Daniel smiled and touched the scale that hung around his neck on a simple chain, still glowing with that steady, warm pulse. Some debts he was learning got paid whether you asked for it or not. And some friendships lasted across the stars. 1 year later, a diplomatic vessel arrived at mining station Sigma-12. It bore the insignia of the newly formed Human-Draconian Alliance, an organization that had grown out of the first contact that had happened in this very cargo bay. On board was a young woman who had just graduated from Earth's finest engineering school with the highest honors in her class. Her name was Sophie Harper, and she was serving as a junior technical advisor on the first official cultural exchange mission between humans and dragons. And standing beside the human delegation, wearing the ceremonial jewelry of a draconian diplomatic, was a familiar figure with amber scales and ancient, wise eyes. Had kept her promise. They met again. Daniel watched as his daughter and the young dragon embraced like the old friends they had become through years of correspondence. He watched as representatives of two species that had never known each other now worked together toward a common future. He watched as the cargo bay that had once sheltered a desperate family now served as the meeting place for an alliance that would change the galaxy. And he understood, finally, that what had started as a simple act of kindness had grown into something far greater than he could have imagined. Not because he had expected anything in return, but because he had opened a door when someone needed shelter. And through that door, a new universe had walked in.